The 1960s were a transformative period in the American automotive industry, but not every car rolled out of the factories with success. While some iconic muscle cars and sleek cruisers defined the era, others missed the mark completely. Here are 15 of the worst and silliest American cars from the 1960s, each flawed for a different reason. The 1961 Pontiac Tempest stands out as one of the more ambitious, yet ultimately flawed, vehicles of its time. On paper, it seemed like a revolution in automotive engineering, with its innovative rear-mounted transaxle and a rope drive shaft, technically known as a flexible shaft. These features were meant to improve weight distribution, handling, and ride comfort, a daring departure from conventional American car designs. However, what was meant to be a technological leap forward quickly turned into a mechanical headache for its owners, who found themselves grappling with a host of reliability issues. One of the Tempest's most unique features was its rope-like drive shaft, also called a torque shaft, which was a flexible steel cable that ran from the engine to the rear-mounted transaxle. This was designed to eliminate the need for a traditional, bulky drive shaft tunnel, providing more interior space. But what looked good on the drawing board didn't translate well into the real world. The drive shaft was prone to developing slack over time, leading to vibrations and eventual failure. Owners were often plagued by constant drivetrain issues, with parts breaking down far more frequently than expected. The complexity of the system also made repairs difficult and expensive, a nightmare for mechanics who weren't used to dealing with such an unconventional setup. The rear-mounted transaxle, while innovative, added to the Tempest's troubles. It was a component more commonly seen in European sports cars, not American family sedans. While the idea was to improve weight distribution and handling, the execution fell short. The transaxle was fragile and prone to failure, especially when subjected to the everyday driving conditions of American roads. Combined with the rope drive shaft, this created a complicated mechanical system that simply couldn't hold up to the wear and tear expected of a daily driver. For many owners, the novelty of the design quickly wore off as the repair bills piled up. Another significant issue with the Tempest was its engine options. Despite its advanced drivetrain, the engine choices didn't offer the power or performance to make the car stand out. At launch, the base engine was a 195 cubic inch slant 4, which was essentially half of a Pontiac V8 engine. This configuration resulted in a rough, unbalanced ride with noticeable vibration. While Pontiac later introduced a V8 option, the initial engine offerings were underwhelming, especially considering the complexity of the rest of the car. For many buyers, the Tempest's lack of power was a major disappointment, especially in a market that was moving toward more powerful and responsive engines. The 1961 Tempest also had design quirks that confused and alienated potential buyers. Its unusual drivetrain layout led to an odd weight distribution, which affected the car's handling in ways that didn't always feel intuitive. On top of that, the suspension was designed to accommodate the flexible drive shaft, but it wasn't as robust as it needed to be for American road conditions. As a result, the Tempest handled awkwardly compared to its more traditional competitors, making it a hard sell for buyers used to conventional driving experiences. Despite all of these issues, the Tempest had the potential to be a game changer. It was one of the first compact cars from a major American manufacturer, a response to the growing popularity of smaller, more fuel-efficient cars in the early 1960s. Its lightweight construction, innovative drivetrain, and rear-mounted transaxle could have made it a trailblazer, especially as the American auto industry began shifting away from the massive land yachts of the 1950s. Unfortunately, its engineering complexity overshadowed its potential, and many buyers found the car to be more trouble than it was worth. In the years since its release, the Tempest has developed a certain charm among car enthusiasts for its bold attempt at innovation. Some view it as a precursor to more successful rear transaxle vehicles, like the Chevrolet Corvette or Porsche 911, cars that would perfect the concept that the Tempest attempted to introduce. Pontiac would eventually refine the Tempest in later years, moving away from the fragile rope drive shaft and offering more conventional, reliable engineering. But the 1961 model remains a symbol of automotive ambition that wasn't fully realized. While it may not have been the revolutionary car Pontiac had hoped for, it stands as a fascinating chapter in the history of automotive design, where bold innovation met harsh reality. The 1964 Mercury Park Lane Breezeway is remembered as one of the more unusual entries in the world of luxury sedans, not just for its performance or design, but for its peculiar rear window feature that became its defining characteristic, and ultimately its downfall. Marketed as a premium sedan that offered both sophistication and innovation, the Park Lane Breezeway was an attempt by Mercury to distinguish itself from competitors by adding a unique selling point: a rear window that could retract into the body of the car. While the concept seemed intriguing and promised enhanced ventilation, it ended up being more of a gimmick than a true advancement, and the car's awkward design choices left it languishing in the marketplace. The retractable rear window, or breezeway as it was called, was intended to provide a flow of fresh air through the cabin without needing to open the side windows, reducing wind turbulence for passengers. In theory, this was a novel approach to improving cabin comfort, but in practice, it led to more problems than solutions. One of the primary complaints was that the feature was prone to mechanical failure. The retracting mechanism, while innovative, was delicate and often broke down. Owners frequently had to deal with stuck windows or malfunctioning motors, and getting them repaired wasn't always easy or cheap. What was supposed to be a sleek and stylish feature quickly became a source of frustration for buyers who found themselves visiting repair shops more often than they expected. Beyond the mechanical issues, the breezeway feature also compromised the car's aesthetics. The need to accommodate the retractable window resulted in an awkward, almost boxy rear design that clashed with the sleek lines of the rest of the vehicle. While Mercury had hoped the retractable rear window would be seen as a bold design choice, it ended up creating unbalanced proportions that were less appealing than the more cohesive designs of its competitors. The rear of the car jutted out in a way that seemed out of sync with the rest of the vehicle, giving the Park Lane Breezeway a distinctly awkward appearance from certain angles. For buyers looking for a luxury vehicle with clean, elegant lines, this was a major turnoff. Even without the awkward rear window design, the Park Lane Breezeway had other issues that detracted from its appeal. The car was large and heavy, a reflection of the American appetite for big luxury sedans in the early 1960s. But it was also cumbersome to drive. Its size made handling less than nimble, and parking the car was a chore in urban environments. The weight also affected fuel efficiency, which was becoming a growing concern as consumers started to look for more economical options. Despite its luxury branding, the Park Lane struggled to justify itself to a buyer base that was increasingly looking for a balance of style, performance, and practicality. Inside the cabin, the Park Lane Breezeway did offer some of the expected luxury features, but it wasn't enough to overshadow its other shortcomings. The interior was spacious and well-appointed, with plush seating and chrome accents that gave it a refined look. However, the retractable rear window didn't offer as much of a functional advantage as Mercury had hoped. While it did allow for some air circulation, it wasn't a game-changing feature, and many owners found themselves rarely using it. The novelty wore off quickly, and the impracticality of the design became more apparent over time. Additionally, the tendency for the rear window to leak during heavy rain only added to the list of frustrations. The Park Lane Breezeway also faced stiff competition in the luxury sedan market, particularly from brands like Cadillac and Lincoln, which offered more conventional designs that catered to the tastes of the era. Mercury's attempt to stand out with the Breezeway window ended up isolating it from buyers who favored more classic, elegant designs. While Mercury tried to market the retractable window as a selling point, it ultimately wasn't enough to convince buyers that the Park Lane was a superior choice in the crowded luxury car segment. In hindsight, the 1964 Mercury Park Lane Breezeway is seen as a quirky footnote in automotive history, a car that tried to innovate but missed the mark. The retractable rear window was an idea that might have worked if it had been better executed, both in terms of mechanics and design. However, in its final form, it was a feature that added complexity without adding real value. The awkward rear styling and mechanical reliability issues tarnished the car's reputation, and buyers were left with a luxury vehicle that didn't quite deliver on its promises. Today, the Park Lane Breezeway is remembered more for its unusual rear window than for anything else. A car that symbolizes the sometimes misguided attempts to innovate in a competitive market. The 1960 Buick Invicta aimed to embody the spirit of American automotive grandeur, big, bold, and brimming with power. It was introduced as a stylish, mid-range, full-size car, positioned between the Buick LeSabre and Electra, intended to offer the best of both worlds, a combination of performance, luxury, and affordability. Yet despite its promising beginnings, the Invicta's weight and size ultimately became its downfall, tarnishing its reputation and making it a symbol of the limitations of American engineering excess in an era when cars were beginning to embrace sleeker and more efficient designs. At first glance, the Invicta was an impressive vehicle. With its sweeping lines, iconic chrome detailing, and aggressive front grille, the car certainly commanded attention on the road. It exuded the optimism of post-war America, where bigger was often seen as better, and automakers competed to make the most luxurious and powerful machines possible. The Invicta came equipped with a potent V8 engine, providing ample horsepower for those seeking speed and muscle in their daily drive. On paper, it was everything that the modern driver could want. However, once the Invicta was put on the road, its shortcomings became apparent. Its immense size and weight, tipping the scales at over 4,000 pounds, made it sluggish and difficult to handle. The car's bulk hampered its acceleration and maneuverability, especially compared to lighter and more nimble competitors entering the market during the 1960s. While the Invicta could certainly achieve speed with its powerful engine, it took time to get there, and drivers often found themselves wrestling with the vehicle in tight turns or when trying to navigate urban streets. Parking the Invicta was no small feat either, and many owners quickly discovered that the car's dimensions were better suited for open highways than crowded city environments. Beyond its handling issues, the Invicta's weight also contributed to its notoriously poor fuel economy. In the early 1960s, gas prices were still relatively low, but buyers were starting to take note of how much they were spending at the pump. The Invicta's heavy frame and inefficient design made it a gas guzzler, and even with the economic optimism of the time, this was a growing concern. While performance was important to buyers, they didn't want to pay the price of constant refueling for a car that didn't live up to its performance promises. The Invicta's high fuel consumption became a major downside, especially as automakers began to explore ways to offer both power and efficiency. In contrast to the sleek, lightweight cars that were becoming fashionable in the 1960s, the Invicta felt like a relic from an earlier time. It represented a transitional phase in automotive design when the industry hadn't fully embraced the changing tastes of consumers. Cars like the Chevrolet Corvair and Ford Falcon were starting to gain traction, with their compact designs and more economical engines signaling the shift in consumer priorities. Buick, on the other hand, had invested heavily in the traditional full-size sedan market, and the Invicta was a victim of this lag in innovation. While it could satisfy those who still craved the powerful land yachts of the 1950s, it felt increasingly out of place in a world where sleekness and agility were becoming key selling points. The interior of the Buick Invicta was also a mixed bag. On one hand, it featured plush seating and the kind of chrome-laden dashboard that was popular at the time. There was a sense of comfort and luxury in the cabin, and Buick prided itself on delivering a quiet, smooth ride. Yet even here, the car's bulk became an issue. Despite its large dimensions, the interior wasn't as spacious as buyers might have expected. The heavy doors and thick pillars made the car feel somewhat claustrophobic, and the interior layout wasn't particularly well utilized. The design felt more like an afterthought, with the emphasis placed on exterior grandeur rather than driver and passenger comfort. Mechanically, the Invicta suffered from issues beyond its weight. Its suspension system, while designed to provide a soft ride, often struggled under the car's heft. Many owners complained of body roll during cornering, and the braking system wasn't always up to the task of stopping such a heavy vehicle efficiently. While the car could cruise comfortably on straight highways, it was less suited for more demanding driving conditions, such as hilly terrain or twisty roads. This made the Invicta feel less responsive and more prone to mechanical wear and tear, leading to maintenance headaches for owners. Ultimately, the Buick Invicta's downfall was its inability to adapt to the shifting automotive landscape of the 1960s. Its heavy, clunky design stood in stark contrast to the more agile and fuel-efficient cars that were beginning to capture the American imagination. The Dodge Polara, introduced in the early 1960s, was intended to be a full-size car that combined power, comfort, and style in a single package. It was meant to compete in a crowded market where cars like the Chevrolet Impala and Ford Galaxy were making waves. However, the Polara never quite lived up to the expectations that Dodge had set for it. Despite its initial promise, it quickly earned a reputation for bland styling and poor handling, leaving it to fade into obscurity as one of the more forgettable models of the decade. One of the Polara's most glaring issues was its uninspired design. The 1960s was an era when car manufacturers were pushing the envelope in terms of aesthetics, with sleek, futuristic lines and bold chrome accents that captured the spirit of the times. The Polara, unfortunately, seemed to miss this memo. While some might argue that its clean, minimalist look could be seen as elegant, most buyers found it dull and unmemorable. It didn't have the eye-catching fins of the earlier tail fin era, nor did it adopt the sporty, muscle car cues that would dominate later in the decade. Instead, the Polara sat somewhere in the middle, blending into the background with its boxy, nondescript appearance. Even worse, the Polara's lack of styling flair wasn't compensated by its handling or driving experience. The car's suspension was overly stiff, which resulted in a ride that was far from comfortable. On smooth highways, it could manage well enough, but as soon as the road became rough or uneven, passengers could feel every bump and dip. This was in stark contrast to some of its competitors, which had more refined suspension systems that offered a smoother, more comfortable ride. Dodge had aimed to make the Polara a performance-oriented car, but in their pursuit of firmness, they created a vehicle that lacked the plush, luxurious feel that many buyers were looking for in a full-size sedan. Handling was another area where the Polara fell short. Despite its relatively powerful engine options, the car felt clunky and unresponsive on the road. Its heavy steering and lack of agility made it difficult to maneuver in tight spaces, and it struggled on winding roads. Compared to lighter, more nimble cars from other manufacturers, the Polara felt like a lumbering giant, slow to react and difficult to control. While it may have been adequate for straight-line highway driving, it simply couldn't deliver the kind of dynamic, engaging driving experience that more performance-oriented models were beginning to offer. The interior of the Polara didn't do much to redeem the car either. While it was spacious, offering plenty of room for passengers, the cabin was bland and utilitarian. The dashboard was simple to the point of being sparse, and the materials used felt cheap and uninspired compared to the more luxurious finishes found in rival cars. There was little in the way of innovative features or cutting-edge technology, leaving the Polara feeling like an afterthought in an era when car interiors were starting to become more than just functional spaces. They were becoming statements of style and sophistication. Dodge, it seemed, had focused more on making the Polara an affordable, no-nonsense vehicle, rather than a car that could capture the imagination of buyers. Mechanically, the Polara had its fair share of issues as well. While it was offered with a range of V8 engines, the car's weight and poor aerodynamics meant that even the most powerful options didn't translate into thrilling performance. It was capable of decent speed, but it didn't feel fast or exciting to drive. Worse yet, the car's handling quirks made it hard to take full advantage of its engine power. Drivers had to wrestle with the steering and suspension, and the Polara never quite gave them the confidence they needed to push the car to its limits. Fuel economy was another area where the Polara lagged behind its competitors. In an era when gas was cheap, fuel efficiency wasn't always a top concern, but the Polara's thirst for fuel was still notable. Its large, heavy body required a lot of power to move, and this translated into poor mileage. For buyers who were looking for an everyday family car, this was another strike against the Polara, especially as more economical options were starting to appear in the marketplace. Ultimately, the Dodge Polara failed to stand out in any meaningful way. It wasn't a bad car in the sense that it was unreliable or poorly built, but it simply didn't offer anything that made it special. Its bland styling, uncomfortable ride, and lackluster performance left it in a no man's land. overshadowed by more stylish, better-performing competitors from both domestic and foreign manufacturers. The Polara may have been a solid, dependable vehicle, but in a decade defined by innovation and excitement in the automotive industry, that wasn't enough. The 1965 Plymouth Fury, a staple of Chrysler's lineup, underwent a significant redesign that year, transforming into a full-size sedan that was larger and more imposing than its predecessors. While Plymouth intended this change to position the Fury as a dominant force in the growing full-size car market, it quickly became clear that bigger wasn't necessarily better. The 1965 model's increased size came with a host of problems that ultimately turned many potential buyers away, and its reputation as a big, unwieldy vehicle would come to define this iteration of the Fury. One of the most glaring issues with the 1965 Fury was its sheer bulk. At a time when American automakers were locked in a race to create ever larger and more luxurious cars, Plymouth took the redesign of the Fury as an opportunity to expand the car's dimensions. Unfortunately, this increase in size made the car cumbersome and difficult to handle. On narrow city streets and tight corners, the Fury felt clumsy and unwieldy, requiring careful maneuvering just to park or navigate through traffic. This was a significant drawback for everyday drivers who were looking for a car that could offer both comfort and ease of use. The Fury's large frame and long wheelbase simply didn't lend themselves to nimble handling, which left it at a disadvantage compared to smaller, more agile competitors like the Ford Galaxy or Chevrolet Impala. The increased size of the Fury also had a major impact on its fuel economy. While fuel efficiency wasn't a primary concern for many buyers in the mid-1960s, the Fury's notoriously poor gas mileage made it a costly car to drive, even by the standards of the day. Its large V8 engine options, designed to provide the power needed to move such a heavy vehicle, were gas guzzlers, and frequent trips to the pump became a reality for Fury owners. With rising awareness of fuel economy, even before the oil crises of the 1970s, this was a significant downside for a car that was marketed as a practical family sedan. The Fury's poor mileage became yet another reason for buyers to look elsewhere. While Plymouth did offer several engine options for the Fury, ranging from a 318 cubic inch V8 to more powerful big block engines, the performance still failed to match the car's size and weight. Even with the larger engines, the Fury didn't offer the kind of dynamic acceleration or speed that some competitors were delivering. The added weight of the vehicle dulled its performance, making it feel sluggish compared to smaller, more performance-oriented cars. While the Fury could cruise comfortably on highways, it lacked the kind of responsiveness that made driving enjoyable. Buyers who expected a big car with big performance were often disappointed by the Fury's relatively underwhelming capabilities. The Fury's handling problems were exacerbated by its suspension setup. While Plymouth aimed to make the Fury's rides smooth and comfortable, the soft suspension led to excessive body roll when cornering, and the car often felt disconnected from the road. This lack of precision in handling made the Fury feel even more unwieldy on winding roads or in situations where quick steering inputs were necessary. For drivers used to more responsive vehicles, the Fury felt like an oversized boat that was difficult to control. This was a stark contrast to the emerging muscle cars and smaller performance sedans that were becoming popular during this period, which offered a much more engaging driving experience. In terms of styling, the 1965 Fury was neither bold nor particularly memorable. It featured a fairly straightforward design with sharp lines and minimal ornamentation, which, while not unattractive, didn't do much to stand out in a crowded field of full-size sedans. Plymouth's decision to keep the design relatively conservative may have been an attempt to appeal to a broad audience, but in a decade where automotive styling was becoming increasingly adventurous, the Fury's understated look failed to capture the excitement that buyers were looking for. It didn't have the sleek, futuristic lines of some of its competitors, and while it was functional, it lacked the flair that could have made it a more compelling choice. The interior of the 1965 Fury was similarly utilitarian. It offered plenty of space thanks to the car's large dimensions, but the cabin didn't feel particularly luxurious or innovative. The materials used in the interior were functional but unremarkable, and the design was plain compared to some of the more stylish and feature-packed offerings from other manufacturers. While it had plenty of room for passengers, it didn't deliver the sense of refinement or comfort that full-size car buyers expected from higher-end models. In an era where interiors were becoming an important selling point, the Fury's cabin felt a little too basic to compete with more upscale competitors like the Chevrolet Impala or Ford Galaxy. The 1966 Chevrolet Caprice was introduced as the brand's flagship, aiming to offer a more luxurious alternative to the Impala and other mainstream models. Marketed as a premium full-size sedan, the Caprice was loaded with high-end features and innovative gadgets that were meant to make it stand out as a symbol of comfort and modernity. However, while Chevrolet successfully packed the car with electric conveniences and luxury elements, many of these features quickly turned into liabilities, making the Caprice a frustrating ownership experience for many buyers. The mid-1960s saw American automakers pushing the boundaries of luxury, adding an array of electric features designed to appeal to drivers seeking the latest conveniences. The Caprice, positioned at the top of Chevrolet's lineup, came equipped with electric windows, power-adjustable seats, and a host of other gadgets, including advanced climate control systems and even optional cruise control. In theory, these features were meant to give the Caprice an air of sophistication and provide an effortless driving experience. Chevrolet envisioned the Caprice as a car for discerning buyers who wanted both power and refinement, and the abundance of electronic features was a major selling point. However, what was meant to be an asset soon turned into one of the Caprice's greatest flaws. The electrical systems in the 1966 model were prone to frequent breakdowns, leaving many of the car's luxury features useless. Electric windows would get stuck halfway open or fail to operate altogether, power seats would jam, and the climate control systems were unreliable. Owners who expected a high-end driving experience often found themselves dealing with malfunctioning systems, which required costly and time-consuming repairs. At a time when reliability was a key concern for buyers, the Caprice's failure to deliver on its promises of luxury without headaches became a major disappointment. The problems with the Caprice's electric gadgets weren't limited to just a few unlucky owners. Complaints about the vehicle's unreliable systems were widespread. Given the complexity of some of these features, repair work was often expensive and required specialized knowledge, which wasn't always readily available at local dealerships or mechanics. For many buyers, the constant need for repairs and maintenance negated the initial appeal of having a car loaded with gadgets. What should have made the Caprice a luxurious and convenient ride instead became a major source of frustration, especially for those who had invested in the top-tier model expecting a trouble-free ownership experience. In addition to the unreliable electronics, the sheer complexity of the Caprice's features sometimes made simple tasks more complicated. For example, the car's advanced climate control system, while innovative for its time, was difficult to operate and frequently malfunctioned. Drivers were often left fumbling with controls that didn't respond as expected, leading to inconsistent temperature regulation in the cabin. This was a particular problem in regions with extreme weather, where buyers expected the Caprice's climate control system to provide comfort on long drives. Instead, they were often left either too hot or too cold, with no easy way to fix the issue without a trip to the repair shop. The Caprice also faced criticism for its performance, which didn't always match the luxurious feel that Chevrolet had intended. While the car was available with a range of V8 engines, including the powerful 396 cubic inch option, its weight and the addition of so many luxury features made it sluggish compared to some of its competitors. The extra weight from all the gadgets and comfort-oriented features hurt the car's acceleration and handling, making it feel more like a cumbersome cruiser than a responsive, performance-oriented vehicle. While the Caprice was certainly capable of delivering a smooth, comfortable ride on highways, it lacked the kind of dynamic driving experience that buyers of large sedans were starting to expect in the mid-1960s. Stylistically, the 1966 Caprice was well received, with its sleek lines and understated elegance giving it an upscale appearance. However, while it looked the part of a luxury car, its aesthetic couldn't compensate for the practical problems that came with owning one. The Caprice's interior, though spacious and comfortable, didn't quite live up to the standards of luxury set by other brands like Cadillac or Lincoln. Chevrolet was trying to position the Caprice as a premium offering, but in many ways it still felt like a dressed-up version of the Impala, rather than a true luxury sedan. Buyers who were willing to spend more money on features like electric windows and power seats often found that they weren't getting a truly premium experience, especially when those features frequently broke down. The 1960 Lincoln Continental Mark represented the final iteration of the Mark series before a complete overhaul in design. By this time, the Continental's bulky, squared-off look was becoming increasingly out of sync with the rapidly evolving automotive trends of the 1960s. While Lincoln had once been a leader in American luxury, the Mark V's outdated boxy design and massive proportions made it a poor fit in an era where cars were starting to embrace sleeker, more aerodynamic styling. The result was a car that was difficult to drive, impractical for everyday use, and ultimately a disappointment in a decade marked by innovation and change. At a time when Cadillac was refining its designs with softer curves and more modern looks, and when European imports were starting to offer more compact and elegant alternatives, the Lincoln Continental Mark V felt stuck in the past. Measuring over 19 feet long and weighing more than 2 tons, the Mark V was one of the largest cars on the road, and this massive size was both its selling point and its downfall. While it promised supreme comfort with its vast interior space, the sheer bulk of the car made it cumbersome to handle. Maneuvering such a large vehicle in tight spaces was a nightmare for drivers, and parking it in urban areas was nearly impossible without a lot of patience and effort. The Mark V was powered by a large V8 engine, but its size meant that the engine's power wasn't enough to make the car feel nimble or responsive. Acceleration was sluggish, and while it could cruise comfortably on long, straight highways, driving in cities or on winding roads was a chore. The car's enormous weight also severely impacted its fuel economy, which was a growing concern for American drivers as gas prices started to creep upward in the 1960s. The Mark V was an unapologetic gas guzzler, and with fuel economy becoming more important to consumers, this inefficiency was a serious drawback. Buyers who could afford the Mark V's hefty price tag might not have been concerned with fuel costs initially, but the car's appetite for gasoline became harder to ignore as the decade wore on. One of the biggest issues with the 1960 Lincoln Continental Mark V was its failure to adapt to the changing tastes of the American car-buying public. The 1950s had been a time of excess, with larger-than-life cars dominating the roads. But by 1960, design trends were moving toward a more streamlined, minimalist aesthetic. The Mark V's boxy, over-the-top design, with its massive chrome bumpers and sharp angles, felt outdated and clunky in comparison to the sleeker, more aerodynamic cars that were starting to capture the public's attention. While other manufacturers were embracing new technologies and designs that hinted at the future, Lincoln's Mark V seemed stuck in the past, trying to hold on to a bygone era of automotive extravagance. Inside the car, the Mark V did offer an impressive level of luxury, with plush seating and high-quality materials throughout. It was designed to provide maximum comfort for long-distance cruising, and in that respect, it succeeded. The spacious interior with its broad bench seats and generous legroom made the car feel like a rolling living room. Passengers could stretch out and enjoy the ride in supreme comfort. But even the luxurious interior couldn't fully compensate for the car's poor driving dynamics. While the Mark V might have been a pleasant place to sit, it wasn't particularly enjoyable to drive. The suspension was soft, resulting in a floaty, disconnected driving experience, and the car's enormous dimensions made it feel awkward on anything other than a straight highway. The Mark V's styling was also a point of contention for buyers. Its boxy shape and abundance of chrome gave it a heavy, imposing presence, but it lacked the elegance and grace of competing luxury cars from brands like Cadillac or Imperial. The Mark V's oversized grille and square headlights contributed to its somewhat ponderous appearance, and while it had a certain stately charm, it wasn't the kind of car that would turn heads for the right reasons. By 1960, buyers were looking for cars that exuded modernity and sophistication, and the Mark V's old-school, overbuilt look just didn't fit the bill. In terms of sales, the Lincoln Continental Mark V struggled to keep pace with its competitors. Buyers were gravitating towards smaller, more efficient cars that offered a blend of style and performance, while the Mark V remained a symbol of outdated excess. Its failure to evolve with the times left Lincoln in a precarious position, and the Mark V became emblematic of the brand's struggle to remain relevant in a rapidly changing market. It would take several years and a complete redesign for the Continental to regain its status as a true competitor in the luxury car segment. The 1967 Chevrolet Impala station wagon is a curious chapter in the story of an iconic nameplate that was synonymous with performance, style, and power. By the late 1960s, the Impala had already solidified its reputation as one of America's best-selling cars, known for its sleek design and the power of its V8 engines. However, when Chevrolet introduced the station wagon variant in 1967, it was clear that this version of the Impala fell short of the legacy established by its more exciting coupe and sedan siblings. Instead of embodying the spirit of the muscle car era, the station wagon felt sluggish, uninspired, and compromised. The station wagon was built with practicality in mind, designed to cater to growing American families who needed more space for children and cargo. In terms of size and utility, the Impala wagon certainly delivered. Its large frame and spacious interior could comfortably accommodate passengers and luggage, making it a solid choice for road trips or daily family duties. But where the station wagon succeeded in terms of functionality, it faltered in performance, and that's where the disappointment set in for many buyers. At its core, the 1967 Chevrolet Impala station wagon lacked the performance chops that had become synonymous with the Impala brand. The wagon was available with several engine options, including a 283 cubic inch V8, a 327 cubic inch V8, and a larger 396 cubic inch V8. But even with these choices, the driving experience was underwhelming. The car's significant weight, exceeding 4,000 pounds, meant that even the larger engines struggled to provide the same kind of thrilling acceleration or agility found in the Impala sedans and coupes. The wagon simply didn't have the muscle to match its size, leaving it feeling sluggish on the road, especially when fully loaded with passengers or cargo. Acceleration was a particular sore point for many drivers. While the larger V8 engines could provide a reasonable amount of power, the Impala station wagon was slow off the line, especially compared to the more nimble performance cars that dominated the era. The muscle car culture was in full swing by 1967, with vehicles like the Pontiac GTO, Ford Mustang, and even the Impala SS stealing the spotlight with their blistering speed and aggressive styling. In contrast, the station wagon variant of the Impala felt like a poor cousin, a large, lumbering vehicle that was simply unable to keep pace with the high-performance expectations that the nameplate carried. Handling was another area where the 1967 Chevrolet Impala station wagon failed to impress. Its heavy frame and soft suspension, which were intended to provide a smooth ride for families, instead made the car feel disconnected from the road. Cornering was sloppy, and the car's long wheelbase made it difficult to maneuver in tight spaces or on winding roads. While it may have offered a comfortable ride for passengers, the driver was left with little sense of control or engagement. Compared to the crisp handling of smaller, sportier cars in the Impala lineup, the station wagon felt like a barge, slow to respond and unwieldy to navigate. Fuel economy, while not a top priority for most cars of the 1960s, was another downside of the Impala station wagon. Its large V8 engines consumed fuel at an alarming rate, particularly when tasked with hauling around the car's considerable bulk. This was less of an issue in an era when gas was cheap, but as road trips became more common and families used their station wagons for extended travel, the frequent stops at the gas station began to add up, further detracting from the car's appeal. In terms of design, the 1967 Chevrolet Impala station wagon didn't stand out as particularly stylish or exciting. While the standard Impala sedans and coupes had the benefit of sleek lines, a low-slung profile, and aggressive front-end designs, the station wagon version felt more utilitarian. It lacked the distinctive flair that made other Impalas so desirable, and instead it leaned into the conservative station wagon aesthetic that prioritized function over form. While this might have been suitable for families in need of a practical car, It didn't do much to inspire excitement in a decade that celebrated bold automotive design and high-performance engineering. The interior of the Impala station wagon, though spacious, also reflected its practical nature. There was plenty of room for passengers, and the rear-facing third-row seat was a feature that appealed to families with multiple children. However, the interior materials were not particularly luxurious, and the car lacked many of the features that were becoming standard in more upscale vehicles. While the wagon could fit the whole family, it didn't offer much in the way of comfort or innovation beyond the basics. The 1964 Rambler Classic stands as a testament to the utilitarian ethos of its time, aimed squarely at the no-nonsense buyer who prioritized reliability and practicality over style and excitement. Rambler, a brand that carved out a niche in the American automotive landscape during the 1960s, aimed to attract families and budget-conscious individuals. However, while the Classic did succeed in delivering the essential qualities that many buyers sought, it ultimately fell short in the areas that could have made it a memorable or desirable vehicle. From a design perspective, the 1964 Rambler Classic was incredibly understated, featuring clean lines and a conservative silhouette that blended into the background of the automotive landscape. While this aesthetic might have appealed to some, it lacked the boldness or innovation that many consumers were starting to expect from their cars. In an era defined by the exciting designs of brands like Ford and Chevrolet, the Rambler Classic simply didn't stand out. Its look was more about function than flair, which made it a forgettable choice in a market that was increasingly leaning toward more striking designs. Under the hood, the Rambler Classic offered a variety of engine options, including a 3.2-liter inline-six and a more powerful 4.7-liter V8. While these engines provided decent performance for everyday driving, they were far from exhilarating. The Classic's acceleration was adequate for typical commuting, but it didn't deliver the spirited driving experience that many buyers desired. The performance was competent rather than exciting, leading many enthusiasts to overlook the Classic in favor of sportier models from competitors. Handling, too, was more about practicality than thrill. The Classic had a smooth ride that catered well to families and long-distance drivers, but its steering and suspension systems felt somewhat disconnected from the road. The car did well in providing a comfortable ride for its occupants, but it lacked the agility and responsiveness that made driving enjoyable. This further cemented its reputation as a vehicle designed for those who needed a car to get from point A to point B, rather than for those looking for an engaging driving experience. Inside, the Rambler Classic was functional, but again lacking in any real excitement or luxury. The cabin featured basic materials and straightforward controls, designed to prioritize comfort and usability over aesthetics. While the seating was spacious enough for families, and the car had a reasonable amount of cargo space, the interior felt bland and uninspired. For buyers seeking a bit of flair or premium touches in their vehicles, the Classic came off as disappointingly utilitarian. The marketing approach for the Rambler Classic emphasized its practicality and affordability, positioning it as an ideal choice for families looking for a reliable vehicle without the bells and whistles. However, this focus on no-frills functionality meant that the Classic often got overlooked by consumers in favor of more exciting options. As American car culture evolved in the 1960s, buyers increasingly sought vehicles that offered both style and performance. The Rambler Classic, with its bland design and lackluster driving experience, simply couldn't compete with the flashier offerings from other manufacturers. Additionally, the Rambler brand itself struggled with identity during this period. While it aimed to offer a sensible alternative to larger, more ostentatious vehicles, it often got lost in the shuffle among the more established brands that dominated the market. The Classic became emblematic of this struggle, appealing to those who prioritized basic transportation, but failing to capture the interest of a broader audience. In retrospect, the 1964 Rambler Classic serves as a reminder of a different era in the automotive world, one that valued practicality above all else. While it fulfilled its purpose as a reliable and functional vehicle, it lacked the charm, excitement, and personality that many buyers craved. In a decade marked by rapid change and innovation, the Classic was a vehicle that played it safe, ultimately leaving it as a footnote in the annals of automotive history rather than a standout model. For those seeking a vehicle that would deliver joy behind the wheel or turn heads on the street, the Rambler Classic simply did not fit the bill. It was the choice for those who needed reliable transportation but had little regard for the excitement that came with driving. The 1969 Cadillac Coupe DeVille stands as a quintessential representation of American luxury cars during the late 1960s, embodying a level of opulence that was both impressive and impractical. Cadillac, a brand synonymous with luxury, had long set the standard for comfort and style in the automotive world. However, while the Coupe DeVille showcased the company's commitment to lavishness, it also highlighted the challenges of excessive luxury in a changing automotive landscape. At first glance, the 1969 Coupe DeVille was an imposing figure on the road, with its elongated silhouette and elegant lines that screamed sophistication. The design featured a classic Cadillac front end, complete with prominent chrome accents, a large grille, and sweeping fenders. This grandiose appearance was certainly eye-catching and commanded attention, but it also made the car cumbersome to maneuver, especially in urban environments. The sheer length of the vehicle resulted in a massive turning radius, making tight corners and parking in crowded spaces a daunting task for even the most skilled drivers. Inside, the Coupe DeVille was a veritable palace on wheels, filled with luxurious materials such as leather upholstery, rich wood accents, and plush carpeting. The attention to detail was remarkable, offering passengers a sense of comfort that was unrivaled at the time. However, this luxurious interior came with a caveat. The emphasis on plushness often came at the expense of practicality. The car's design prioritized aesthetics over functionality, leading to a cramped cabin space for passengers, particularly in the rear seats. While the front seats were generously proportioned and comfortable, the rear compartment felt somewhat confined, particularly for taller individuals. The emphasis on opulence sometimes overshadowed the need for practical space in a vehicle intended for both cruising and everyday use. Moreover, the Coupe DeVille's sheer size posed a challenge in terms of handling. Drivers found that the heavy body, combined with the car's soft suspension, made for a less than responsive driving experience. While Cadillac touted the vehicle's smooth ride, this often translated to a feeling of disconnect between the driver and the road. Navigating through city traffic or winding back roads required a level of caution that detracted from the enjoyment of driving. The car's bulkiness made it feel more like a ship than a sedan, and many drivers longed for the agility and responsiveness offered by smaller, sportier models. One of the most significant drawbacks of the 1969 Coupe DeVille was its thirst for fuel. The era was beginning to witness a shift in consumer preferences as concerns over fuel efficiency started to rise, particularly in light of the impending oil crisis. The Coupe DeVille, equipped with a powerful V8 engine, delivered impressive performance but at the expense of fuel economy. Owners quickly found themselves at the gas pump more often than they would have liked, and the escalating fuel prices during the late 1960s further underscored the impracticality of owning such a large, gas-guzzling vehicle. The perception of excess was beginning to wear thin, especially among buyers who were becoming more conscious of their environmental impact and overall costs. Additionally, while the Coupe DeVille was undoubtedly a status symbol, the weight of its luxurious features made it feel unwieldy. The focus on lavishness led to a car that prioritized appearance over practicality. As the automotive landscape began to evolve, with rising competition and changing consumer tastes, the once unquestioned dominance of cars like the Coupe DeVille faced new scrutiny. Buyers were beginning to seek vehicles that offered a balance between comfort and performance, rather than pure opulence. In summary, the 1969 Cadillac Coupe DeVille serves as both an icon of American luxury and a cautionary tale of the pitfalls of excess. While it dazzled with its extravagant features and striking design, the car ultimately struggled with practical issues that hindered its appeal. As drivers began to prioritize handling, efficiency, and everyday usability, the allure of an overly luxurious vehicle started to diminish. The Coupe DeVille, with all its grandeur, became emblematic of a bygone era, one that celebrated luxury but failed to adapt to the evolving demands of the automotive market. While it will always be remembered as a classic symbol of status, its impracticality and excessive nature would eventually pave the way for a new generation of vehicles that sought to blend comfort with functionality in a more balanced way. The 1962 Chrysler Newport was introduced during a time of transition and increased competition in the automotive industry. Chrysler intended the Newport to serve as a more affordable luxury option, but it quickly became clear that it fell short of expectations in several areas. Despite its aim to appeal to a wide market, the Newport was overshadowed by more innovative and exciting vehicles from both American and international manufacturers. One of the primary issues with the 1962 Newport was its design. While other manufacturers were embracing bold, modern styling, Chrysler opted for a more conservative approach with the Newport. The result was a car that looked uninspired and lacked the visual appeal necessary to stand out in a crowded market. Its boxy lines and unremarkable details did little to differentiate it from other vehicles on the road, leaving potential buyers unimpressed. The early 1960s were a period when automakers were pushing the boundaries of car design. Long, sweeping curves, exaggerated tail fins, and chrome accents were common features in luxury and mid-range vehicles. However, the Newport did not capitalize on these trends. It was a functional vehicle, but it lacked the pizzazz that buyers were beginning to expect from even more affordable models. The bland styling of the Newport became a key factor in its struggle to attract a significant customer base. In addition to the unremarkable design, the performance of the 1962 Chrysler Newport also left much to be desired. At a time when powerful engines and robust performance were becoming key selling points, the Newport's engine options were underwhelming. The base model was equipped with a 361 cubic inch V8 engine, which, while not completely inadequate, did not provide the kind of performance that many buyers were seeking. The horsepower and acceleration fell behind the competition, especially when compared to some of the muscle cars and performance-oriented luxury vehicles being produced by other automakers during the same period. Buyers looking for speed or a thrilling driving experience were often left disappointed by the Newport. While it wasn't a particularly slow car, it didn't provide the kind of excitement that many consumers were beginning to expect from V8-powered vehicles. Moreover, with several competitors offering more powerful engine options, the Newport felt somewhat outdated in terms of its mechanical offerings. Chrysler, known for its powerful engines in other models, did not deliver the same experience with the Newport, which hurt its appeal. The interior of the 1962 Newport was another area where the car failed to impress. Chrysler marketed the Newport as an affordable luxury vehicle, but the inside of the car did not live up to the luxury designation. While functional and decently spacious, the interior materials were of average quality, and the design was as bland as the exterior. It lacked the refined details and high-end materials that were becoming more common in luxury vehicles of the time. Buyers expecting an elevated driving experience were likely underwhelmed by what the Newport had to offer inside the cabin. In terms of features, the Newport didn't do much to distinguish itself either. While some cars in the early 1960s were beginning to offer more advanced options, such as power windows, upgraded sound systems, and air conditioning as standard features, the Newport remained relatively basic in its offerings. It didn't push the envelope in terms of technology or comfort, which further contributed to its lackluster reception in the marketplace. One of the challenges for the 1962 Chrysler Newport was that it didn't seem to know what it wanted to be. Positioned as an affordable luxury car, it didn't offer the opulence that buyers in the luxury market were looking for. At the same time, it wasn't sporty or performance-focused enough to attract those seeking a powerful or exciting vehicle. This left the Newport in a kind of no man's land where it couldn't effectively compete with either high-end luxury cars or the more performance-driven models that were growing in popularity at the time. The automotive market in the early 1960s was highly competitive, and the Newport simply didn't offer enough in any one area to make it stand out. While competitors like Cadillac and Lincoln were offering more stylish and luxurious cars, even brands like Ford and Chevrolet were producing vehicles that had stronger performance and more cutting-edge features. The Newport, with its conservative design and average performance, felt like it was playing catch-up rather than leading the pack. Despite its shortcomings, the Chrysler Newport did have some redeeming qualities. It was a solid, reliable car that provided a smooth and comfortable ride, which appealed to some buyers. For those who were less concerned with performance or flashy design, the Newport could be a practical choice. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed car enthusiasts and lovers of automotive history. Today we turn our attention to a vehicle that stands at the crossroads of ambition and disappointment, the rare 1967 Mercury Cougar. This car entered the market with a bold and eye-catching design, marketed as a muscle car that promised power and performance. However, the reality was far less impressive, as the Cougar ultimately proved to be a muscle car. Imposter. Lacking the necessary power to back up its aggressive appearance. The vision behind the Cougar. When Mercury introduced the Cougar, it was intended to capture the spirit of the muscle car era, a time when performance and style were paramount. With sleek lines and an aggressive stance, the Cougar aimed to attract buyers looking for a vehicle that exuded confidence and power. The marketing campaign presented it as a fierce competitor in the muscle car segment, appealing to those who wanted to make a statement on the road. Design, striking yet deceptive. The design of the 1967 Cougar was undeniably striking. Its long hood, short deck, and aggressive grille conveyed an aura of strength and speed. The styling was deliberately crafted to resemble its more powerful counterparts, such as the Ford Mustang and Chevrolet Camaro, creating an image that promised an exhilarating driving experience. However, the striking exterior belied the underwhelming performance that lurked beneath the surface. While the Cougar looked the part of a muscle car, it failed to deliver the performance that enthusiasts sought. Its exterior was more than just eye candy. It was designed to attract attention and evoke admiration. Unfortunately, for many drivers, the excitement ended when they pressed the accelerator. Performance, a disappointing reality. As we delve into the heart of the matter, we find that the engine options for the Cougar fell short of expectations. Mercury offered a variety of engines, but most were underpowered compared to the offerings from competing brands. The base engine was a 200 horsepower six-cylinder, while the available V8 engines struggled to provide the exhilarating performance that muscle car enthusiasts craved. In a market that was becoming increasingly competitive, the Cougar's lack of power became its Achilles heel. Buyers who were looking for a vehicle that could deliver speed, acceleration, and excitement found themselves let down by the Cougar's performance capabilities. The bold design, which had promised so much, became a cruel joke as the Cougar struggled to keep pace with its rivals. While other muscle cars of the era roared with power, the Cougar's timid engine responses and lack of thrilling performance left many enthusiasts seeking alternatives. It became clear that the Cougar, despite its enticing appearance, was more of a showpiece than a genuine contender in the muscle car arena. Market reception and competition. As the muscle car market continued to evolve in the late 1960s, the Cougar faced stiff competition from established powerhouses. Cars like the Chevrolet Camaro, Ford Mustang, and Pontiac Firebird were not only visually appealing but also delivered on performance. These competitors were able to combine power with style, making them the clear favorites among buyers. The Cougar's inability to compete in terms of power meant that it struggled to find its footing in a landscape filled with high-performance options. While it was marketed as a muscle car, it became evident that it was not a serious contender, leading many potential buyers to turn to more capable alternatives. The Cougar's identity as a muscle car was undermined by its performance shortcomings, and the disillusionment felt by consumers only grew over time. Legacy and lessons learned. In retrospect, the 1967 Mercury Cougar serves as a cautionary tale for automakers attempting to navigate the muscle car market. While its design was undoubtedly ambitious, the failure to deliver on performance ultimately defined its legacy. The Cougar's status as a muscle car imposter left it struggling for recognition in a market that was unforgiving to vehicles that did not live up to their bold claims. As we consider the lessons learned from the Cougar's journey, it becomes evident that success in the automotive industry requires more than just an attractive exterior. Manufacturers must ensure that performance aligns with the promises made in marketing campaigns. A vehicle that looks powerful must also be able to deliver exhilarating experiences on the road. Conclusion. In conclusion, the 1967 Mercury Cougar stands as a reminder of the complexities of the muscle car era. While it aimed to capture the hearts of enthusiasts with its striking design and promise of performance, it ultimately fell short. The Cougar's lack of power rendered it a muscle car imposter, disappointing buyers who were eager for excitement and thrill. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed automotive enthusiasts and lovers of classic cars, today we delve into the story of a vehicle that held great promise yet ultimately faltered due to its fundamental shortcomings: the 1968 Ford Torino. This car was introduced during a transformative period in the American automotive industry, a time when muscle cars were gaining significant popularity. The Torino was designed to capture a segment of buyers looking for power and performance, but it became evident that poor build quality would hinder its potential for success. The vision behind the Torino. When Ford launched the Torino, it was marketed as a mid-range muscle car that promised to deliver a blend of performance and affordability. With sleek styling and a powerful engine lineup, the Torino aimed to compete with other popular muscle cars of the era, such as the Chevrolet Chevelle and Plymouth Roadrunner. Ford envisioned the Torino as a vehicle that would appeal to young drivers seeking both excitement and practicality in their daily lives. Unfortunately, the reality of the Torino's execution would soon overshadow its initial appeal. Design, aesthetically appealing but flawed. The 1968 Torino boasted an attractive design characterized by clean lines and a sporty profile. It featured a long hood, a fastback roofline, and distinctive front-end styling that conveyed an aggressive stance. The aesthetic elements were crafted to appeal to consumers who valued style alongside performance. On the surface, the Torino appeared to be a worthy contender in the muscle car segment, ready to make its mark. However, the allure of the Torino was not enough to mask the deficiencies that lay beneath its striking exterior. While it may have caught the eye of potential buyers, the promise of quality and durability was quickly called into question. The build quality, a critical downfall. As consumers began to take ownership of the 1968 Ford Torino, many quickly discovered that the vehicle's build quality was a significant area of concern. Rushed production processes and the use of cheap materials led to a myriad of mechanical issues and reliability problems. From poor alignment to faulty electrical systems, the Torino was plagued by a range of issues that left many owners frustrated. The promise of a mid-range muscle car that could deliver performance and style was overshadowed by the reality of frequent repairs and maintenance. What could have been a triumphant entry into the muscle car market turned into a source of disappointment for many. Owners who had high hopes for their vehicles found themselves dealing with problems that undermined their enjoyment of the Torino. Market reception and impact. The automotive market of the late 1960s was becoming increasingly competitive, with numerous manufacturers vying for consumer attention. Ford was up against heavyweights like Chevrolet, Dodge, and Plymouth, all of whom were producing vehicles that not only looked good, but also delivered on performance and reliability. In this landscape, the Torino's reputation suffered. As word of its build quality issues spread, potential buyers began to reconsider their options. The Torino's inability to meet consumer expectations left a lasting impact on its market presence. Buyers who initially viewed the Torino as a promising choice for a muscle car began to turn to competitors that offered not only better performance, but also the reliability that was becoming increasingly important to consumers. The Torino's reputation as a mid-range muscle car was tarnished by its build quality problems, and the competition capitalized on this vulnerability. Legacy and lessons learned. As we reflect on the legacy of the 1968 Ford Torino, it becomes clear that this vehicle serves as a cautionary tale for automakers navigating the complexities of the automotive market. While it was launched with high hopes and the potential for success, its poor build quality ultimately defined its legacy. The Torino stands as a reminder of the importance of quality control in vehicle production. When a manufacturer prioritizes speed over craftsmanship, it risks alienating consumers who seek reliability and durability in their vehicles. Moreover, the Torino's story emphasizes the need for manufacturers to listen to customer feedback and address issues promptly. The automotive industry is built on reputation, and once a brand is tarnished by reliability concerns, regaining consumer trust can be a daunting task. Conclusion. In conclusion, the 1968 Ford Torino is a poignant reminder of the fine line that exists between ambition and execution in the automotive industry. While it was designed to be a competitive mid-range muscle car, its poor build quality and reliance on subpar materials turned it into a disappointment for many owners. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed automotive enthusiasts and admirers of classic cars, today we gather to reflect on a vehicle that epitomizes the intersection of ambition and misfortune in the automotive world. The Chrysler 1960 DeSoto Adventurer. This car was introduced during a dynamic era of change and innovation, yet it ultimately fell victim to outdated styling and overpriced positioning. As we delve into the story of the Adventurer, we will uncover how its inability to adapt to the evolving market led to its decline and the eventual discontinuation of the DeSoto brand itself. Chakun, the legacy of DeSoto. To understand the significance of the 1960 DeSoto Adventurer, we must first acknowledge the legacy of the DeSoto brand. Founded in the 1920s, DeSoto was known for producing well-engineered vehicles that aimed to offer a blend of style, performance, and affordability. However, by the 1960s, the automotive landscape was rapidly changing, and the expectations of consumers were evolving. As competitors embraced new design trends and modern engineering techniques, DeSoto struggled to keep pace. The Constructor, a dated design. When the 1960 DeSoto Adventurer was introduced, it was clear that its design was an anchor from a bygone era. The Adventurer's styling echoed the flamboyant aesthetics of the 1950s, characterized by sweeping lines, chrome accents, and exaggerated tail fins. While these design elements may have once captured the spirit of the times, by 1960 they had become painfully outdated. The automotive industry was shifting toward a more streamlined and modern look, one that emphasized simplicity and aerodynamic efficiency. Competitors like Ford, Chevrolet, and Pontiac were launching vehicles that not only looked contemporary, but also exuded a sense of forward-thinking design. The Adventurer, on the other hand, appeared stuck in the past, struggling to resonate with buyers who were eager for something fresh and exciting. The disconnect between the Adventurer's design and consumer expectations became increasingly evident, leading to a lack of interest in the model. The price tag, an unfavorable comparison. Compounding the Adventurer's struggles was its overpriced positioning. In the market, despite its outdated styling and lack of modern features, the DeSoto Adventurer was priced in a way that did not reflect its value proposition. Consumers looking for a new car had plenty of options at various price points, and many were more than willing to invest in models that offered both contemporary design and competitive features. The Adventurer's high price tag, when juxtaposed with its lack of appeal and outdated aesthetic, left potential buyers questioning its worth. Many turned to competitors that not only provided modern looks, but also offered a better bang for their buck. The mismatch between what the Adventurer promised and what it delivered led to poor sales, and the model quickly fell out of favor with consumers. The decline of DeSoto. The failure of the 1960 DeSoto Adventurer was not an isolated incident, but rather a reflection of broader issues within the DeSoto brand itself. Struggling to compete in a rapidly changing automotive market, DeSoto saw its sales decline steadily throughout the late 1950s and into the 1960s. The Adventurer, with its outdated styling and unfavorable pricing, became a symbol of the brand's struggles. By 1961, just a year after the release of the Adventurer, the DeSoto brand would be discontinued altogether, marking the end of an era. The inability to adapt to changing consumer preferences and a failure to innovate ultimately led to DeSoto's demise, and the Adventurer remains a poignant reminder of what happens when a brand cannot keep up with the times. Lessons learned. As we reflect on the legacy of the 1960 DeSoto Adventurer, it serves as a cautionary tale for automakers. The automotive industry is in a constant state of flux, and staying relevant requires a commitment to innovation and responsiveness to consumer demands. Vehicles must not only capture the spirit of the times, but also reflect the evolving tastes and expectations of buyers. Moreover, pricing strategy plays a crucial role in a vehicle's success. Consumers today are more informed and discerning than ever, and they are willing to invest in products that offer genuine value. When a vehicle fails to deliver on its promises, especially at a premium price, buyers will seek alternatives. Conclusion. In conclusion, the 1960 DeSoto Adventurer serves as a striking example of how dated styling and overpriced positioning them can lead to a vehicle's downfall. Once a symbol of ambition and potential, the Adventurer ultimately fell short of consumer expectations and became a casualty of the changing automotive landscape. We gathered to discuss a vehicle that represents a well-intentioned yet ultimately flawed endeavor in the automotive landscape, the Packard 1963 Chevrolet Corvair Monza. This car aimed to capture the hearts of drivers seeking an affordable and sporty alternative to traditional compact vehicles. However, the Corvair Monza struggled with significant issues that rendered it a poor attempt at sportiness. Its legacy serves as a lesson in understanding the delicate balance between ambition and execution in automotive design. The vision behind the Corvair Monza. When Chevrolet launched the Corvair Monza, it was positioned as a sporty, affordable alternative to more established sports cars. The 1960s were an exhilarating time for the automotive industry, marked by a growing demand for performance-oriented vehicles that offered excitement and style. The Monza was introduced with the promise of a fun driving experience, catering to consumers who wanted something sporty without the hefty price tag typically associated with performance cars. With its unique rear-engine layout, sleek design, and an array of appealing features, the Monza sought to capture the essence of a sports car while remaining accessible to the average driver. However, the ambitious vision behind the Monza soon began to unravel, revealing significant flaws that would hinder its success. A sporty design, aesthetic appeal versus functionality. On the surface, the 1963 Chevrolet Corvair Monza was visually appealing. Its sporty design included a long hood, a short deck, and an inviting interior that promised a comfortable driving experience. The Monza was marketed to attract younger buyers and those looking for a thrilling ride, and it certainly had the looks to make a strong first impression. However, as we all know, a car is more than just a pretty face. The aesthetics of the Monza could not mask the engineering challenges that plagued its rear-engine layout. This unique configuration, while intended to enhance handling and provide a distinctive driving experience, ultimately led to significant instability issues. The very design that was meant to set the Monza apart became its Achilles heel, undermining its performance and reliability. Handling woes. The instability dilemma. As drivers took to the road in their Corvair Monzas, many quickly discovered the unsettling reality of its handling. The rear-engine design, which had been touted as a revolutionary feature, resulted in unpredictable driving dynamics. While some enthusiasts appreciated the Monza's uniqueness, the reality was that it suffered from significant stability issues, especially during sharp turns and aggressive maneuvers. Drivers often experienced a lack of control, which made the Monza feel more like a gamble than a sporty ride. This unpredictability was a glaring issue for consumers, who expected a level of performance and confidence from a car marketed as sporty. In a world where true sports cars like the Ford Mustang and Chevrolet Corvette were gaining traction, the Monza's inability to deliver a reliable and engaging driving experience left it at a distinct disadvantage. Competing in a crowded market. The 1960s saw an explosion of interest in performance vehicles, with numerous manufacturers vying for the attention of consumers seeking excitement behind the wheel. In this competitive landscape, the Corvair Monza was forced to compete against established names and models that not only boasted superior performance, but also a reputation for reliability. While the Monza aimed to capture a share of the sporty car market, it struggled to stand up to competitors. True sports cars of the era, like the Porsche 911 and the Jaguar E-Type, offered exceptional performance and handling that the Monza simply could not match. As buyers became more discerning in their choices, the shortcomings of the Corvair Monza became increasingly apparent, leading to a decline in interest in sales. Legacy and lessons learned. The story of the 1963 Chevrolet Corvair Monza serves as a poignant reminder of the challenges faced by automakers when trying to innovate and capture market share. While the Monza was designed with the best intentions, its shortcomings in handling and stability ultimately defined its legacy. Moreover, the Monza's fate underscores the importance of thoroughly understanding the engineering implications of design choices. A vehicle's performance must align with consumer expectations, particularly in segments where competition is fierce. Manufacturers must prioritize reliability and handling alongside aesthetics to create a well-rounded driving experience. These 15 additional flops from the 1960s highlight how not every car released in that decade was a masterpiece. From overcomplicated engineering to bland designs and outright mechanical failures, these vehicles show that even major manufacturers weren't immune to missteps.